Let's talk about our final topic, which is partial applications. We talked about in function composition we can like chain the one function to another function, and we did what is like combining two things and reducing it to one. We did it by combining or like chaining functions. In partial applications we are gonna like use similar stuff, but it's actually the stuff is like that you have one value that is already like being passed in, like it's expecting one input. So the partial application or the partial function would be like it's expecting two function parameters, and we will pass only the one argument. Okay, expecting two parameters and passing in one argument and getting the result. Because it's expecting two values, one value is going to be like auto filled in, and we're going to see how it's going to auto pre-fill that value. So we are going to make a function called multiply is equal to, I'm gonna like return it with like write it with the arrow syntax a comma b, and then a return a multiply by b. Okay, and then I'm gonna like make a prefill function, const prefill function. I'm gonna explain this function in depth, don't worry if you don't understand with the flow. I'm gonna declare another function called prefill function, and this is also gonna be an arrow function. Inside of that it's gonna take in two arguments, and inside of that it's gonna take in two parameters. One is gonna be a function which we will pass in, like we will pass in like this function, but let's take in fn as a parameter, and the second parameter would be, let's say, a live input or whatever. Let's call it live input, and inside of that we're gonna declare an inner function, and these two functions would act as a backpack or like here as a like layer, and so this would act as a like backpack or like surrounding data which will be attached to this function. So I'm going to declare an inner function, and inside of that it's gonna take in live input, and it's gonna be the prefill value. And inside of inner function I'm gonna do is call the or declare a variable called output. We will call the function, and in output we'll take in whatever is returned from fn or pass in whatever function is passed to this parameter. We're gonna call that function and pass in two arguments. One is gonna be like live input which the user passes in, and the other is gonna be like preferred value. Okay, and after that we are gonna return output. When this function is called, it's gonna like return the inner, this inner function, the whole inner function. And let's call const or declare another function, or let's call first prefill function, and inside of that we're gonna pass in multiply, this multiply function, whatever is value is passed to this. And the second is gonna be like whatever you can take in. I'm gonna like take in 2 for now, like I want to like prefilled value, whatever is that is gonna be 2, like which we want to be automatically put in. And I'm gonna take its output in a variable called const multiply by 2. Okay, and then prefilled function is ready, and now we just have to take the result or call multiply by 2, which is gonna call the inner function, and I will pass in 5 for now, so it should return out 10. Let's console log result, and let's see that in depth in our dev tools. So we got 10. So let's go to debugger and debug this code. I'm gonna add in a breakpoint over here, and I'm gonna watch. Okay, and I'm gonna like refresh this, and after this I'm gonna like expand this a little bit so we can see it better. So we are now at line number 203. I'm gonna step in. After that, what happens? So we go to the second line, which is 205. we declare another function. The prefill function is now in call stack, and inside of that we are declaring or like taking two parameters, fn and prefill value. Okay, let's step in. We added that, and now we just after declaring that, we just got out of that because we're not calling that function, so we are not going inside of that. Now we are at line number 214. We are declaring a function multiply by 2 and taking in whatever the return of calling the prefilled function with multiply value and 2. So actually what we are doing is now we are calling the prefill function with the arguments of multiply in fn and 2 in prefill value. This function is now going to run, and whatever is output is going to be stored in multiply by 2. So at this point, when I step in, we are going to go directly into this function. So let's step in. Now we can see that this function fn is now stored multiply a and b, and the prefill value is 2. So now we are at line number 206. So we are declaring an inner function which when we return will hold the values which are attached with backpack like fn and prefilled to it. Okay, so because we are not calling that, now we are just declaring inner function with the live input. So we are returning that into multiply by 2. Okay, we are not calling, so the inner body of this is not gonna run. So I'm gonna step in, and you can see we are now at line number 211. We stored inner function and is holding the backpack to it, the fn and prefill value, and now we are returning inner, and it should be stored into 14. Let's step in at 212. This function is going to be and yeah, it's now out of the call stack, and you can see at line number 214 the inner function is stored into it. So basically in multiply by 2, the whole inner function with its backpack data, this backpack data is stored. Okay, multiply by 2 has a function of inner which has a live input. We can pass in any value. For now we will pass in 5, and it has a prefilled function. It has some backpack data which is prefilled function and values fn and prefilled value, and then the multiply function, we're getting that, we run that code and we got that. And then when I step in, I'm gonna like go to line number 216, and when I call multiply by 2, you know that in multiply by 2 the inner is stored with this backpack data. This function is gonna run, and let's step in, and you can see we passed in 5 to the inner function. The inner function is stored into it. Instead of, if we call that in multiply by 2, the inner function is stored. Now when we pass in 5 to this, we are passing 5 to inner, and the 5 is now the argument of live input. So we got live input. We are actually passing in multiply by 2 only one value like 5. 2 is automatically it's automatically gonna be filled in by default, and we're gonna see that how that when we pass in prefilled value, and it will get prefilled value from its backpack data. You can see when I hover over it, this is 2. It's already like there in inner backpack, because prefill function execution context is already gone. You can see that prefill function is not in call stack, its execution context is gone. The inner function is now executing, and in inner function the prefill value 2 is already stored, and we are calling only multiply by 2 function with the value of 5. Okay, so 2 is automatically filled in, and I'm gonna call in. For now I pass in 5. Now I'm gonna call in at line number 207 this function multiply by 2, and we're gonna multiply whatever we pass in 5 with whatever is stored in the backpack of inner function prefilled value parameter. Okay, so 5 and 2 is gonna be passed as argument to this function at this point, because fn is basically multiply. We saw that we passed in multiply over here, and when I step in, you can see that now we are here. The first is 5 live input, and the second is gonna be 2, which we got from backpack of inner, and yeah, it's gonna be 2, and 5 multiplied by 2 is gonna be 10. And when I step in, it's gonna return out 10. It's gonna do calculation. Now we are over here, we got 10 from here we got the multiplication, and now we're storing this output in a variable called output, and now we are returning that, and then when we will execute it, and then we will store that in a result, and then we will log that result. We are at line number 200, and when I step in, I am just about to the inner function out of the stack. So you can see result is now 10, and now I can console log result. I hope you gotta understand that how can we pre-fill the value, like we pass in only 5 is taking into pre-filled. That's partial applications are like one value is like automatically pre-filled in, and I hope you got a little bit of understanding. Now we'll console log the result. We got it. That's it for this video. See you next time. This was the last concept of the function programming.